From engine swaps to box trucks to Grandpa's Impala, the LS engine had a home in everybody's hearts. Today, I'm going to talk about why the LS engine is so good.
Once upon a time, a bunch of guys got together with a crazy idea. Go farther, faster than mankind ever had before. While time has marched on and priorities have changed, it's nice to know America still builds rockets.
I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this.
So what exactly does LS even mean, right? Well, it stands for luxury sport. And as you can guess it, the LT series base that everyone knows as well stands for luxury touring. The year's 1997. General Motors decides that we're going to go ahead and overhaul and upgrade the C5 Corvette. With it, though, comes rise to the great LS base engines as we know. The LS1 engine was first introduced in the C5 Corvette. So produced from 1997 to 2004, the LS1 5.7 liter V8 initially came in the Corvette, then followed by the Camaro and the Firebird. With this release started the kickoff of the Gen 3 family of Chevy's LS-based engine. It made 345 horsepower and 350 foot-pounds of torque out of a 5.7 liter V8 design. Now what this meant was that you were making some serious horsepower for a light chassis, and it was also very reliable. Come 2001, they decided to make a little bit more updates and changes to the design, and it yielded about another 10 horsepower and torque for each. Now that the LS1 has been on the scene for quite a while, and is the cool kid on the block, Chevy decided it was time to go ahead and release out some more of the big guns, thus coming out with the Z06. Now with the Z06, they needed a better platform. So they took the LS1 and they decided to create a version called the LS6 and effectively made 385 horsepower and 385 foot-pounds of torque. This was from 2001 to 2004. The LS6 was more or less the same as the LS1, except it had a higher compression ratio of 10.5 to 1. It had an intake manifold that breathed better, and it had a cam that was higher in lift and in duration. In addition to those minute changes, it also had sodium-filled valves and a better oiling system. Now that the LS1 engine has been established, as well as the LS6 engine, it's time to introduce the big guns. Here comes the LS2. Starting in 2005 with the C6 Corvette, Chevy decided to revamp the LS platform once again, coming out with everyone's beloved LS2 engine. A lot of the LS6 pretty much got carried over to this. The engine and knock sensors were relocated, the bore size went up from 3.9 to 4 inches, and it produced roughly 400 horsepower and 400 foot-pounds of torque. And the compression ratio was 10.9 to 1. If you stop and think about that for a second, the compression ratio is 10.9 to 1 on an overhead valve design, as well as a 6 liter based V8 that produced 400 horsepower and 400 foot-pounds of torque in 2005. That was incredible for a naturally aspirated engine. Even to today's standards in 2021, it's still considered excellent. In addition to that, the LS2 engine is still one of the most swapped engines of all time. It's easy to replace, reliability is great, there's just many things about it that's amazing. The form factor, for instance, is incredible. You can literally take the engine, swap it into a Mazda Miata, and you would only add about 100 pounds of weight, and the form factor would be the same. That's another thing that makes the LS engine so great, is that their form factor is amazing. I love the Coyote engine, I made a video on it. However, I have to give it to Chevy with their small block design. So once again, Chevy is like, we're not done here. Hold up guys, hold on. The LS2 is great, but we're gonna give you something a little bit better. We're gonna come out with the LS7. was designed for the Corvette Z06 in around 2005-2006. It was a 7-liter V8 based off of the LS2 Gen 4 design, but it was improved by a lot. It produced 505 horsepower and 470 foot-pounds of torque. It had a 7,000 RPM redline. 7,000 in 2005-2006. Insane. In addition to that, there's a big difference with the block. The block was sleeved with iron cylinders and had aluminum block. It had a 4.125-inch bore and had a forged steel crankshaft and main bearings. It also had forged titanium connecting rods and pistons. In addition to that, it had increased sodium-filled valve sizes as well, which is very, very important for stability and obviously for getting air in and out as quick as possible. There's also rumors, and this is very interesting, rumors during the initial testing period about the engine being capable of hitting 8,000 RPM. Now, I don't know if these rumors are true or not, but I've seen some videos where I believe it. The LS7 is a very sought-after engine just because of how over-engineered it was at the time. They pretty much gave it every beefed-up component you can think of, and a lot of people still would love to swap these into everything because who doesn't want a massive V8 engine? As time goes by, technology gets better. Once again, Chevy decides that they need to release the Ls3. From 2008 and on, the Corvette received the Ls3 engine. Now, the Ls3 engine was very unique, and we'll see why. But right off the bat, it produced 430 horsepower and 424 foot-pounds of torque. Essentially, it was an updated Ls2, which had a larger bore of, I believe, almost 4.1 inches, but it yielded 6.2 liters. So you went from 5.7 liters in the LS1 and LS6 to 6.0 liters in the LS2 to now you're at 6.2 liters in the LS3. So this has a larger effect on basically the whole engine's design and performance. So it had higher flowing heads, okay, it had a more aggressive cam, and it had 10.7 to 1 compression ratio. The cylinder head intake valves were increased as well, but it limited RPM, I think right around like 65 to 6600, which is still very impressive. So just by adding the 0.2 liters of displacement, it really does make a big difference in the overall output of the engine. But just because you add a higher displacement doesn't mean that your engine will always be better. So Chevy did a really good job in taking that into account and updating the things that needed to be addressed. Chevy is just like, man, we're just going to send something out again once more. So what they did is in 2009, they decided to come out with the Corvette ZR1. And to this day, I still think that the Corvette ZR1 had a massive impact on every auto manufacturer in the world, along with influencing the horsepower wars that are now basically seen all over the place. Chevy decided to release the ZR1 in 2009, and that came with a 6.2 liter V8 that was supercharged by an Eaton-style Roots blower. It produced 638 horsepower and 604 foot-pounds of torque. It's very interesting because they used the 6.2 liter V8 block and not the 7 liter because the design was better in the 6.2 and it was better at handling the extra cylinder pressures as well as temperatures. So it also had an upgraded dual fuel pressure system. And now what this meant was you could be using say like 35 psi around town, and then say a GTR, Mustang, someone pulls up next to you, wants to race, and you want to just hammer it home, the engine management system will instantly, on a flip of a switch, send that demand all the way up to you, upwards of north of 90 psi. That's amazing for back then. That's great. I mean, a lot of the big tuners and companies in general now, they'll always recommend an upgraded fuel system because of the demand if you're trying to make large horsepower. So this was really a nice stride to amount for that for a stock vehicle. In addition to the LS family was the LSA. So the LSA doesn't really get talked about that much because it's kind of like the black sheep, but a great black sheep of the family. It was still a 6.2 liter supercharged engine, very, very similar to the LS9. The only difference was it had a smaller blower. I think it was like a 1.9 liter. Compression was slightly lower, and it still made like, I think like 556 horsepower and roughly 550 foot-pounds of torque. So it was no slouch whatsoever. It was founded in the CTS-V, and then it was also put in the 2012 Camaro ZL1. So the ZL1 was awesome when it came out, and the CTS-V was just a badass. Everybody loved it. It still is. It's just such a unique experience, and it was Cadillac's highest horsepower engine they've ever put in a vehicle. And arguably, you know, at the time, they didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but you can never have too much horsepower. And in addition to the LSA engine, you had the LT4 engine. And now this is the one that was fitted in Granddad's car. It was fit in a bunch of things because it was designed mainly for a front-wheel drive-based system. You found it in the Pontiac Grand Prix GXPs. It was in the Monte Carlo SSs. No one was really expecting a V8 under the hood of, you know, Granddad's car. So, but it was a great thing to have. So one of the coolest things, in my opinion, about the LS family in general, and Chevy as well, is that Chevy does a good job of making a series of engines that are still available to enthusiasts. So you can go to their website right now in order to create an engine, no problem, no questions asked. Ford does this as well. I believe Dodge does as well. So the American companies are really nice at that. They do have that lineage and homage, and they understand how important power is to, you know, a lot of people. So that is kudos to Chevy for still releasing the LS engines, aside from them not being in production anymore, because in 2014 and up, you have the new LT lines. It still uses what's considered like almost a dinosaur technology. So the fact that they still crank out, produce all these numbers and efficiencies like they do on an older design of a, you know, single camshaft based design with, you know, lifters and rocker arms and basically just old school technology is astounding. So that really allowed them to save space, save weight, and to also still keep reliability. Obviously, all the enthusiasts out there that have made these crazy swaps and have done the things that Chevy probably wouldn't have thought of in a million years would have happened, is all thanks to the enthusiasts and you guys. So hats off to yourself, and hope everybody's safe out there. You know, keep on doing your thing and staying positive. Catch you next time.